Yo, what up, UMU? All right, so we're double tapping today. So welcome to yet another segment of our AFSA interviews. Today we have a very special guest with us today, Senior Master Sergeant Haro from Moody Air Force Base. And we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about his Air Force story and a little bit of resiliency and the bounce back piece. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir, so you can give a quick little introduction about yourself.
All right, I'm Senior Master Sergeant Steve Haro, currently stationed at Moody Air Force Base.
Cool.
Been through different things in all tiers of my career, from being a junior enlisted, NCO, and senior NCO. But the topic I'm really going to hit on today is some things I went on in my career and in my life as a first sergeant that definitely was challenging towards what some people would say the end of their career. And they didn't let it get me down. I had to kind of refocus my priorities, get myself, and to be honest with myself that I needed help, and no one had to take a knee. And then relying on my network to help me get through versus just going through that battle myself.
Cool. All right, so we'll just jump right into it. So you said you used to be a first sergeant. Tell me a little bit about what made you want to be a first sergeant and how that process came about as far as you being selected for first sergeant duties.
So I'm Army brat. My dad was a retired Army, so he was a first sergeant as well. He was a top in the Army. So I kind of got to watch his impact with his soldiers when he bring them to the house for the holidays, working long hours when they're going through stuff and that kind of thing. That really made me track that way, but also I wasn't the best airman. I had a lot of stuff going on when I was at NCO. I was definitely Steve Haro who wore staff stripes versus Staff Sergeant Steve Haro.
Cool.
So I went through all that stuff. And had amazing first sergeants that got me through and pointed me in the right direction. Went through conversation, through action. That was the one job I wanted in the Air Force. I'd always tell people that, like, if we keep you in, what do you want to do? I want to rock a diamond.
Cool.
So yeah, that's what made me want to be a first sergeant.
Awesome. So I think we're streaming just to the YouTube, Tony. That might be why you can't see.
Okay.
Yep. We'll adjust. All right, so you talk about your journey on why you wanting to be selected as a first sergeant. So how was that process for you as far as being selected? Or did you have to say in your unit, or did you PCS with the selection? How did that work out for you?
No, so I actually got picked up at Moody. So I've been at Moody for a hot minute. I got there in 2012, which is wild because I was going home to Travis Air Force Base, going out of tech school instructing, and I was on a deployment and got hey, your orders got modified. You're going to Moody.
Okay.
So I was like, I'm gonna do my 2 years and get out of there, and now I'm still there. You see me walk around. But no, it was getting picked up to be a first sergeant was a battle because I'm an air traffic controller.
Oh, yeah.
So it was always like you're never gonna happen, you're never gonna get released. And I was like, okay, well, I got the opportunity to go be an additional duty first sergeant for a year for the fighter group, which was home, and it opened my eyes to everything that the airmen go through. I always knew some of it because I went through it myself, but I didn't really know everything, like the shirt network.
Cool.
So watching all that stuff happen, had to go back to air traffic. Not had to go back for all my air traffic controllers out there. I wanted to go back, all right. But going back, and then I took a deployment to LUD where I worked at the KIOC doing some airspace.
Okay.
And one day I randomly got a training grip, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm going to the Senior NCO Academy finally. And it was for the First Sergeant Academy.
Cool.
And I almost hit the roof of the KIOC. My senior leader came over to me, asked me, he was like, is everything all right? And I was like, sorry about that. I just got my dream job, and I'm super excited about it. But at that deployment, I was also, for air traffic control, I know different career fields have a high deployment rate. That was my third deployment in 3 years.
Wow.
So being away from my son, who is now 15, and it took a toll on my marriage at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That was in the back of my head. I had this great thing going back to, like, oh man, I get to serve as a diamond.
Yeah.
So coming back and seeing that, and then starting to go through that process, I was immediately signed to the med group.
Mm-hmm.
And coming from ops, going to the med group, it's always different, serve in your capacity.
Yeah.
But I walked in the door, and I just wanted to be there.
Awesome. Shout out to all the first sergeants out there, man. I tell you, it's a calling. A majority of the first sergeants we've ever talked to have had that same sentiment. I've always wanted to be a shirt. I've always wanted to help. They come from a servant or leadership perspective. So shout out to the first sergeants out there.
I think first sergeant is definitely one of those positions where you want somebody that wants to do it.
100%.
It has to have it's a passion.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody because it's delicate.
Mm-hmm.
That interaction that you have with those airmen, leadership teams, because you're part of the triad, is very important. So shout out to the shirts that want a shirt
Yes.
And the ones that don't, please do better.
I appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your story. So you get selected for shirt, you're on this high, and then some things kind of derail a little bit. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so what I walked into when I was coming to be a shirt, come off this deployment, like I said, I was already going kind of through that mental space because I was counting days of like how much I've been gone. Even though I love all of my deployments, I get to build the network, build people up, and make lifelong friends.
Yeah.
But coming back, I came back and I immediately went through a divorce.
Okay.
So that was a massive effect. Trying to keep it together because, like I said, I had a dream job. I was taking care of airmen, and I was just on this high because I got back from deployment. I'm walking and getting a diamond wearer. I got to walk across the stage as a wing senior year that year. So I was on this massive high, and then behind the scenes, people didn't realize that I was tucking away the fact that my marriage fell apart. So trying to hide the fact, trying to wear that mask all day, and it was like I kept it completely hidden. As soon as my tires hit Bemis, so Bemis is as soon as you get off Moody Air Force Base, as soon as my tires came onto the gate, completely different Steve. Came off the gate, it was to the point where I couldn't even control my emotions because I was kept everything bottled up so much. And then when everything started kind of falling apart, there were some allegations against me from my previous spouse. She was also, excuse me, in the military. And we won't get into the whole like playing the victim mindset. Just truth telling is there was a lot of stuff going on. And so it was a breakdown of the triad because of the allegations and being a mid-group shirt. You know, I had to go face that story and tell my side of the story to family advocacy, which is under my group. So that was always weird, but that's when I started realizing there's more to the story. And I went in for being air traffic control. I had to go in for a flight med appointment. And Salvatore Lucido, who was one of my heroes, he asked me one simple question that was, "Are you okay, sir?" And burst into tears. And it was the first time I was actually honest with anybody besides myself.
Wow. So I remember a few years ago, we had a panel with Chief Woods, and it was actually about it was a marriage panel. And Chief Woods brought up like they went through some stuff in there early on in their marriage when he got orders and he was going to receive, and then his spouse didn't want that at the time, and they had a legitimate, transparent conversation. And during us having that conversation, he mentioned that divorce is okay. Like separation is okay. Like growing apart is okay. Like some things, like we as human beings, we kind of latch ourselves to, hey, this is going to be forever, blah, 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 societal norms, societal pressure, parental norms, parental pressure, cultural norms, cultural pressures. And we tend to think that it's such a negative stigma. But if you're going through something like that, man, it's okay. Talk to somebody like you mentioned, man. Like, I applaud you for even talking, because especially being a first sergeant. Somebody's asking, "Are you okay?" Man, did you talk about how there was a different version of you on and off base? That stuff can get taxing, trying to perpetuate that false persona of this is who I am, this is who I'm supposed to be in this mode. Well, when in all actuality, man, like you're going through some things. That's 100% natural.
And it was one of those things of one of the biggest compliments I've ever been paid before by my airmen. They said when they were PCS and actually separating from the Air Force, like, I just appreciate you being Steve with us all the time. Like, you were Tech Sergeant Haro, you're now Sergeant Haro, but anytime we spoke to you, you gave us Steve. And that was something that even during that time, I was just trying to be Steve with people. But Steve was struggling, So when he asked that question, it's one of the hardest questions I've ever had to answer. And it was a real simple one. But that led me to realizing I need to take a knee. But I was also in my dream job. So going through all the stuff, trying to balance things. And like I said, my triad fell apart because there were some allegations out there. And it was hard to get the real side of the story because there were so many people kind of funneling in their perspective to senior leadership. So it was hard. And then I got called in the office, and then I got the notification that they were removing my diamond from me. And so it was heartbreaking to deal with because now I'm losing my dream job. I don't have my marriage. I don't have my family anymore. So it was tough to go through, but part of that too, it taught me so much as a senior NCO, because looking back on it, like at the time, obviously I was very angry. Things were going through, I just came up this high to immediate low months later. And what there were some things I would talk about, checking in on people from the well-being, doing morale checks. I was a shirt who needed a shirt.
Right.
And this is a fact till I won't use names here, but I would get an email that was titled Tuesday, and it said, "Are you going to hurt yourself?" And I was flabbergasted at the fact of, if you really cared about me, you know my address, you know my phone number, but you're going to send me an email to check on me.
Wow.
And I was like, I would never do that to one of my airmen or one of my leaders that were going through some stuff.
Wow.
So it taught me some stuff, and there was some points where going through all of that, because I got my diamond removed, the group felt like it was an automatic thing to give me referral EPR.
Yeah.
And so we're going through that. So we know our SCODs are in September.
Yeah.
I signed my EPR in December because luckily for me, I had an amazing command chief who since passed away, Chief Sebastian, who fought for me, and the wing commander, Colonel Thomas Kunkel, who said, "That's not the Steve that we know."
Yeah.
So they went back and forth with me. I ended up getting an EPR that wasn't stellar,
Mhm.
but it was a referral.
Yeah.
And then they said, "Hey, guess what? You're testing for senior tomorrow." And so I was like, at least I'm testing.
Yeah.
But it was sitting in my chief's office, Greg Brown, who's now retired. He's the old fighter group chief. I'm sitting there and just venting for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And he never looked at me, right? He was just doing his thing. And when I finally stopped talking, he says, "Are you done?" And I was like, done with what? He was like, "Are you done talking?" I was like, "Yes, I'm done talking." He was like, "Do you feel like you're done with your career?" And I was like, "I feel like this makes it like the writing's on the wall." He was like, "It's going to take you longer, but you love taking care of airmen, so you keep doing that, and you're going to keep progressing." He's like, "No, I've said my piece. Go back and take care of airmen,"
Hell yeah.
and kick me out of the office. And I was like, "Dude, that's what I needed."
Hell yeah. So what was that experience like, getting your diamond removed around A, your peers, and B, your leadership team?
It was probably, I'll be honest with you, it was one of the worst experiences I had, because just like a shirt, you're trying to talk these airmen through bouncing back from getting a stripe removed from them. But I was still walking around with my diamond,
Yeah.
but I wasn't in med group. I was back in air traffic.
Yeah.
So all those airmen saw me, and all those airmen that were celebrating me when I got picked up because they were saying the Air Force got it right,
Yeah.
were now asking Sergeant Haro what happened.
Yeah.
And so when it actually came off, it's funny because I dropped my uniforms off at alterations. We had ABUs, and even at alterations, like, that was quick. And I was like, yeah, really, it was, right?
She's brash too. I've gone to her a couple times.
But yeah, it was, the airmen saw it, and then luckily I had an amazing commander in the OSS who was now at Tyndall, Colonel Brian DeWitt,
Mhm.
who immediately had my back. And he had my back, and it wasn't what he said behind a closed door, because I'm sure there was that too.
Yeah.
But it was the fact of he immediately checked on me and kept checking in on me.
That's
Because he was, when I was the additional duty first sergeant, his first day as a commander was my first day as a group first sergeant, and we figured out life together. We had so much going on. I would make the joke that you could blindfold us, and we'd find legal some way. But we had each other's back, and we were not just peers in that situation, the triad, but I would like to consider him one of my dear friends.
Awesome. So Key on the page made a post a couple of days ago where she talked about like how perfection is not the goal when it comes to leadership.
Mhm.
And I think there's something to be said about leaders that have gone through some kind of trials and tribulations. And we had a conversation offline about like, yeah, sometimes there's a perception of perfection, but a lot of times leaders go through things where maybe you missed the mark on something, or maybe like it's a personal thing that you don't share, like whether it's family issues, like I know I talk about like raising my kids all the time, like there's a certain goal or aspiration that you set for your kids, and sometimes they don't want to do that. So you're beating yourself up, like how do I get my kid to do this? Or like maybe my marriage is not going the way I wanted to, or maybe my career is not going the way I wanted to. But a lot of times the people that we lead don't see that side of us.
Yep.
But having your airmen see that you went through this and maintained who you are, stayed taking care of them, I think that builds your credibility as a leader. I think that probably leads you to maybe better future and better things moving forward.
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of people telling me to PCS, but so going through divorce, we said divorce is okay.
Mm-hmm.
It is okay. I'm on wife number 3, so luckily this one is going fantastic, and she's actually she was a huge part to getting me back to be me on taking care of her.
You definitely need that support system.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, and she didn't understand the military side of it. So I'm like trying to explain it to her. She just listened. She listened, and she listened with her heart. So she was able to comfort me because she knew what I went through. And I love it because she'll be at my retirement ceremony. She definitely helped me get through. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I tell my airmen all the time, I'm like, progression, not perfection. Just remember that and stick that in your head. And I was like, as long as you're fixing the small things going forward. And I was like, that's it, man. I was like, learn from your failures. I was like, you're allowed to fail. And I was like, you just don't commit a crime, but you're allowed to fail. I mean, when you fail, I'll be there for you. When you succeed, I'm going to be there for you. And I was like, it's what you guys are doing here with your platform is you're teaching, you're learning through conversation. Yeah. And you learn so much from it. But one of the things I took away from everything I went through was I don't always share that complete story with people because there's so much that goes into it. And being at Moody for so long, if they would have took one down and PCS me, okay, I get a fresh start, but I was willing to stay at Moody with everything I went through because my son was there. Cool. And I was like, I'll walk through fire for him. And I was like, so I'm going to stay here. I'm going to earn it. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to move on. Cool. But yeah, with for the airman side of it, what I took from, I don't share the story through words. I share the story through actions. Oh, yeah. So when people are going through a hard time, I remember what I went through, and I have sympathy, I have grace for them, because there's a lot of time I heard today is sometimes we talk to be understood versus understand. Yeah. And so there's a lot of people that go through stuff and they have key leaders out there or supervisors that just don't understand and unwilling to listen. But that's the first thing we should all be doing is just remain silent, open your ears, and take it all in before you make your judgment on something that someone's going through.
My man is dropping some nuggets right here on this live. Like for real, I want to take like a mid-interview pause and just kind of refresh or recap a few things. The first thing you mentioned that I really want to talk about is like if you're checking on somebody, make sure you're checking on them. Don't send them thing on email. That's crazy. Send me no email. Are you asking if I'm going to hurt myself? I'd have emailed you back. I was like, hey, don't email me.
I probably would have knocked on your office door.
Yeah, like don't do that. If you're going to check on somebody, actually take the time. If you're going to invest in somebody, use your life minutes to invest in somebody. Actually invest in it. Don't half step. 2, my man said, perfection is not the goal, progression is. That's deep. Like legitimately, there are layers to that. Like, man, so many times we're our own critic. Yes. When it comes to a lot of things, our own worst critic. And we're putting this light of perfection or expectation of perfection on ourselves and those around us that we're not realizing what it's doing to us and our teams.
Because there's a lot of perception when that goes into it. It's like people are going to perceive that you have to be perfect. Yeah. That, this person, they do everything. And it sometimes I think it's misguided information. Yeah. It's like, you think I'm perfect. Yeah. I know I'm not perfect, 100%. But you thinking I'm perfect, now you casting judge on me if I do something that's kind of an imperfection, or maybe if I step off for a little bit. So it's like, we got to take that, we got to get that out of us. Like we got to get that out of, hey, how I perceive this person. Yeah. How can I help this person?
Yes.
I don't want to see that you're perfect. I want to help you any way that I can, and I would feel that I want the same thing back.
And the third thing I wanted to highlight from the earlier conversation is like when you said your wife now, when you're talking to her, she just listened. Yeah, man. So many times, like just listening can mean the world to someone. Like not listening to try to fix, repair, but just listening. Man, that's deep.
Yeah, it's one of those things that when people, it's funny when this as well from the impact you've had at Moody. Is when people knock on the door and they go, hey, senior, you got 5 minutes. You can tell them, look on their face that they need an hour.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's where I just close the computer, come on in, or let's get out of the office, let's get out of here. I'm known for my nature walks around Moody because I'll just take care of them like, let's just go outside and walk. Yeah. And we start talking about stuff, and that's where they come back. And when they're making rank or they get picked up for DSTs or things like that, they always come back and go, you realized it without me saying anything.
Yeah. And notice you said something that was very important. Close the laptop first.
Yeah. Yes.
Give them the time.
I'm focused on.
I had an old first sergeant. I went in there telling him about like my dream about being a first sergeant, and all he did was look at his computer and look at the clock. He never made eye contact with me. I was like, this is going nowhere.
And that goes back to the shirts where I was saying,
don't want to be shirts.
Don't want to be shirts. We got to do better.
All right, so let's transition now. So you went through that milestone in your career where things didn't necessarily go your way. There were some hiccups, some opportunities to utilize your resiliency. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about this because you were a first sergeant as a master sergeant. You are a senior master sergeant now. Yes. What did that look like? How did the promotion, getting selected for promotion, what were some feelings you went through? How was that process?
Well, it looked like 6 years is what it looked like. But it was one of those things of I just kept grinding.
Cool.
Because there's a lot of times people do things for promotion,
Mhm.
and they're not doing it because that's their authenticity of what they're trying to do and lead with their heart.
It's shallow.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very, it's superficial.
Mhm.
And so I just kept doing those things. The stuff I was doing as a tech, I was still doing as a master sergeant.
Yeah.
Because if I stop doing them, that talks about my character.
Right.
And so that's what also kind of helped me get through it. I utilize military one source.
Shout out to One Source.
Yes, absolutely. I met a fantastic social worker that I still talk to this day, Judy Trexler, over at Valdosta, and we just connected, and she definitely got me through. And there's multiple times where, if it was sitting down on the couch and my small victory was, hey, I didn't break down in tears today, or hey, I got out of the office and actually talked to people, because the depression side of it is paralyzing to me. But yeah, the bounce back. It took me a while to make senior. But it doesn't mean the stripes doesn't really factor in the impact you can have around the base.
100%.
So it was, a lot of people that were like kind of pushing me. They kept saying, hey, it's going to be your year, going to be your year. And when it wasn't my year, it didn't change my actions.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took me a while. And it goes back to what Chief Brown told me. It's going to take you a while, but you're still going to get to where you need to be.
Oh, yeah.
And if I need to be a master sergeant that retired, then that's where I need to be.
Rank never defines who you are. I mean, your character is not defined by your stripes, bars, leafs, whatever, none of that stars.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. I'm a firm believer in that because I've met some awesome leaders that didn't have a lot of stripes.
Yeah.
I've met some terrible ones that had a lot of position, stripes, power, whatever.
And it's funny you say that because a lot of times on the page, I'll be like, hey, I need leaders to tap in. And somebody will reach out to me and say, hey, I know this guy, but he's not a senior NCO. And I'm like, I never said.
I said leaders.
I said leaders.
Yeah.
Intentionally. I use that word intentionally every single time. It's like, just because you're not a senior NCO doesn't. I know a lot of senior NCOs that are not leaders.
Yeah.
And we got airmen that are leaders. So it's like, whenever I say that word intentionally. Hey, I need leaders to tap in, and I'm not talking about blank at all.
100%. You can impact change, man, at any level. I think, as a matter of fact, one of the things, my talking points is, I think senior airman staff sergeant can impact change a lot better than I am, more effective than I can.
Absolutely.
They quick with.
Oh, yeah.
My kids are teaching me, so I know what senior airman can.
Yeah, and they come out there with life skills that, like, I tell them all the time, like, whenever I have briefings, I tell anybody, I have any kind of talking points, like, I can't teach you how to make rank or get to what I made, because I made rank in the Air Force that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And you're coming into the Air Force from a civilian life that I knew nothing about. Completely foreign. So you can teach me all kinds of stuff. I will forever be a student. And if you take that mindset, it kind of helps you take a step back and look at people for what they are, what their capabilities are, instead of the rank that they hold.
Yeah, absolutely.
My bad, I got no soapbox. So we get to have deep conversations, and we just deep dive into these conversations. But with that, man, we'll do all due respect of your time. I'm gonna we're gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna turn over to you if you have any parting words, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, so I will say one of the other teams. So right now we're down here for the AFSA Peds. So I do have to give the shout out to AFSA. I've been a big AFSA guy.
Shout out to
AFSA.
Absolutely.
While we're here.
So I will say this: with the resiliency piece is through AFSA I built a family. So coming down here, it's a big family reunion. So please get involved with your chapters. Please get involved with your divisions. Right now, I currently sit as Division 2 president. So I oversee 27 chapters, but in that chapter, I don't see members. I oversee family. And so when we come through here, when I was going through a hard time, it was those people that knew me that kept calling me, willing to drive to my house, willing to drive 4 hours to make sure that I was okay. So it was the AFSA family. So I implore people to sign up, take part, and really get to expand your network, and come to events like this and meet people like these.
Hell yeah. All right, so again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your transparency.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, we really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, so with that, team, again, continue to support, stand by as we try to get more interviews squared away. But hey, if there's something you want to see while we're here, please let us know. If you're here at AFSA and you want to stop by and say something to us, come check us out. All right, with that, y'all be easy.
Peace.
So yeah.
It's touchscreen time.
Don't do that.